The Link Between Population Control and Family Planning by Ainsley Rowland. The world's population hit 8 billion almost a month ago on November 15, 2022. Climate change has disastrous effects on the planet and humanity. It threatens access to drinkable water, food security, and overall human health and well-being. Unfortunately, population growth, along with increasing consumption, tends to increase emissions of climate-changing greenhouse gases. Rapid population growth worsens the impacts of climate change by straining resources and exposing more people to climate-related risks, especially in low-resource regions. Facts and statistics from Population Connection. The United States represents just over 4% of the global population, but accounts for 17% of the world's energy use. Every additional person increases carbon emissions, the rich far more than the poor, and increases the number of climate change victims, the poor far more than the rich. Adding both climate change impacts and rapid population growth to regions already dealing with poverty and gender inequalities presents a humanitarian problem that will only continue to worsen if left unaddressed. Slowing population growth through rights-based innovations in reproductive health could contribute over a quarter of the emission reductions needed by 2050 to avoid the most dangerous effects of climate change. The UN's median variant projection shows that the global population could grow to 8.5 billion in 2030, 9.7 billion in 2050, and 10.9 billion in 2100. The fastest growth occurs among the 47 least developed countries. Women's rights from Population Matters. 1 in 4 girls do not attend secondary school. 1 in 5 girls are married before their 18th birthday. Even in many high-income countries, women often get paid less than men for the same jobs, face gender-based discrimination and violence, and suffer from misogynistic attitudes and sexist policies that restrict their autonomy over their own bodies. Child marriage robs girls of a bright future and brings a high risk of death and injury related to pregnancy and childbirth. In most developing countries, a woman's ability to determine the number and spacing of her children is limited or non-existent. The UN estimated that it would cost $264 billion to end the worst gender injustices: violence against women and girls, child marriage, female genital mutilation, preventable maternal deaths, and the unmet need for contraception. Poor reproductive health is a leading cause of illness and death for women in developing countries. Family planning from Population Matters. Unintended pregnancies remain common, while sex education and family planning are under threat from regressive policies and funding restrictions. More than 200 million women in developing countries have an unmet need for modern contraception. This number is still increasing due to family planning services not keeping pace with rapid population growth in the most vulnerable areas. Some 830 women still die every day from pregnancy or childbirth complications, and these remain the primary cause of death for 15 to 19-year-old girls globally. Women often have very little control over which contraception methods they use, if any, and are often powerless in protecting themselves against sexually transmitted infections. Even where contraception is readily available, uptake and use are limited by lack of information and cultural acceptance, resistance from male partners, and affordability. Honoring the dignity of women and children through family planning is not about governments forcing the birth rate down or up through natalist policies, nor is it about those in rich countries, where emissions are highest, telling people elsewhere to stop having children. When family planning focuses on healthcare provision and meeting women's expressed needs, empowerment, equality, and well-being are the result. The benefits to the planet are side effects. A quote from Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. Solutions from Population Connection. Family planning, educating, and empowering girls. The cost of avoiding emissions through investments in family planning comes out to about $4.50 per ton of CO2. Funding family planning and girls' education could avoid a cumulative 85 gigatons of CO2 emissions between 2020 and 2050. That scale of reduction is similar to what could be achieved by shutting down 22,000 coal-fired power plants. Educating girls yields emission reductions at close to $10 per ton of CO2. Family planning options could be provided in low-income countries at an annual cost to $10 per user. Both are cheaper than some other attractive emissions reduction options, such as wind and solar power, 24 and 28 per ton respectively, or new coal power plants with carbon capture and storage technology, which cost $95 per ton. Overcoming cultural bias against family planning. Overcoming cultural bias against family planning. First off, including males in family planning counseling and procedures. Male participation in contraceptive use improves women's uptake and continuity of family planning approaches by increasing spousal coordination and decreasing opposition. Male non-involvement in family planning leads to a high incidence of contraceptive discontinuation among women. And vice versa, male non-involvement in family planning leads to a high incidence of contraceptive discontinuation among women. Second, incorporating religious leaders. Religion can either be a barrier or an aid to family planning, depending on whether religious authorities demonize or encourage it. Third, providing accurate information and education to dispel myths like temporary prevention of pregnancy with contraception can lead to permanent infertility with sustained use. Lack of a monthly period signals a dangerous buildup of blood inside their bodies. Nausea that can be caused by an oral contraceptive may be a sign that acid in the pill is burning their stomach or ovaries. Fourth, including women in positions of power. A sensible question to ask throughout learning about this is who is going to pay for this? Well, first, there is the United Nations Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency, which is funded by governments all across the world, voluntary donors that are partnered with them, and donations from people like us. Second, the Partnership Platform, a global registry of voluntary commitments and multi-stakeholder partnerships in support of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. It's funded by governments, United Nations organizations, intergovernmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, academic institutions, scientific communities, private sectors, philanthropic organizations, and partnerships with businesses or corporations. You can click here to donate to the United Nations Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency, or go to unfpa.org and click Donate. This is my bibliography. I thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something.